Welcome to topic 5 of IB Biology. This topic we focus on evolution and biodiversity. In this video we're going to look at 5.1, the evidence of evolution, and due to the number of concepts we need to cover in 5.1, there are actually 2 videos as part of this section to make it a little more manageable for you. Okay, so looking first at the understanding sections of your unit. So we're going to be talking about evolution, okay? And this is what occurs when heritable characteristics of a species change. So what do we mean by that? Okay, so it's kind of the cumulative change in a species over time. So if you think of humans as a species, Homo sapiens, it's how they have changed over their entire time. Okay, we're not just talking their recent history. We'll look further at that in time. So evolution, as a definition, is the cumulative change in the heritable characteristics of a population. It is not the short-term change of a species. So when we see here, we've got the change in human from its more monkey stages. We're going further back. We're going way back to its initial eukaryotic cell as such in terms of evolution. Alrighty. So if we accept not only that a species can evolve, but also that new species arise by evolution from pre-existing ones, then the whole of life can be seen as unified by its common origins, saying that species evolve from other species. Now, variation within our species is the result of different selection pressures operating in different parts of the world. Yet this variation is not so vast to justify a construct such as a race having biological or a scientific basis. Okay, so we'll further look into this. This is just introducing this whole concept of evolution to you, not just variation. Alrighty, it seems only natural when we start looking at a unit of evolution that we talk about Darwinism. Now, when we talk about Darwinism, we're talking about Charles Darwin, okay? And Charles Darwin proposed a process by which species changed over many generations, and this is what we know as natural selection. Now, this was way before genetics had been discovered, and once Mendel made his breakthrough discoveries, looking at his peas around genetic material, evidence for natural selection was then further supported. So Darwin had these ideas and then Mendel proved them. So when you think about it, we've got Darwin's theory for evolution by natural selection. We then had Mendel's work which confirmed some understanding of DNA and genetics, and we'll look at that further when we study topic 3. And those two working together gave us this modern synthesis, or neo-Darwinism, that is used by evolutionary biologists today. Okay, so having a look at natural selection and evolution, when you think about it, I've already said that evolution is a much longer term process. So natural selection is the mechanism of evolution, which is now really well understood. Okay, so lots and lots of research has now gone into natural selection after Mendel's discoveries with his pea plants. Okay, so what is natural selection? Well, it is literally this idea of survival of the fittest. Okay, so if you've got 2 organisms, similar characteristics, okay, but for some reason one is stronger than the other. It could be in terms of colour. One might camouflage better than another. It may be in terms of fighting. It may be a stronger predator, but the survival of the fittest is the one that responds best to its current environment. Okay, natural selection is the survival of the fittest on then a larger scale, and it involves entire populations. Okay, and then evolution is the consequence of natural selection over thousands and thousands of years. So if you look at this graphic here, we can see that the lighter colour mice were eaten more by the bird because they showed up better. The dark grey kind of camouflaged in. All right, so more grey mice are then reproducing in ratio terms, so you end up with more grey mice than white mice, creamy colour mice. Okay, so evolution via natural selection, the process. So we get variation within a species, and that's a result of genetic and environmental factors, and we look at that further in another unit. We've got selection pressures, which act on individuals due to variation. Again, we look at that further in another unit. Some individuals are better suited to their environment than others. They will have a better chance of survival, so will live longer and have a higher reproductive rate, okay, because there's more of them. And they therefore produce more offspring with those heritable characteristics that are being passed on. Then this cumulative change in the heritable characteristics is called evolution. Okay, so if we think about it, we had those mice, some were creamy colour, some were black. Okay, so we had variation. We had our selection pressures, some were better suited, so that selection pressure being the bird was eating the creamy colour ones, the grey ones were then better suited to the environment, grey ones had the better chance of survival, more grey mice bred with grey mice, therefore we ended up with more grey mice, and over time that cumulative change gives us this evolution of the mouse, the grey mouse. Okay, so what evidence do we have that evolution has occurred? We have the fossil record. Okay, now what are fossils? They're petrified remains or traces of animals. So a fossil can be like evidence of the bones. It could be the bones, it could be indentation in rock that's then got filled in by other sediments, but evidence of bones or remains of animals, and also traces of animals. The footprints can be fossils. So you've probably seen dinosaur footprints in your time. They're still fossils and they're evidence of animals, and fossils can be of plants as well. So these remains, as I just said, could be the hard parts, they could be leaves and stems of plants, and they could be moulds filling in. Okay, trace fossils. Now, what are trace fossils? These are traces of living organisms. So, as I said, like footprints, tracks, feces. Okay, you can have kind of funnel-looking shapes where roots of plants have once been, and things like that. There's a really famous example on the Victorian coast, which once they thought was petrified forest, but now they think is actually where roots of plants once run. So these have been covered up over many of years. They've had deposits left in them that hardens, you get calcified areas, and you still get then the evidence of these trace fossils. Okay, so the fossil record is the accumulation of evidence from these remains and these traces. So any type of fossil accumulates together to give us the fossil record, which you can see there in its full wonder, a part of it. So with evidence from fossils, what have we actually learned? Okay, so we've learned so far that life existed for more than 500 million years ago. Okay, we've learned that life then was vastly different in appearance to life as it is today. And although planet Earth has had extensive oceans for most of its existence, fish fossils have only been found in rocks for 500 million years ago, or 500 million years old, or younger. Less than 15% of the 3.5 billion years of existence of the life of our planet. So fish have not really existed for long at all in terms of the life of planet Earth. What else have we learned? Well, although most of the top predators today are mammals, so bears, orcas, big cats, wolves, none of them existed at a time of the dinosaurs or before. And apart from organisms such as certain types of shark, cockroaches and some ferns, the majority of living organisms today have no similar form in the fossil record. So we've seen this evolution, we've seen this change in organisms. One conclusion that can be drawn from the study of fossils is that life on Earth is constantly changing. Most of these changes have occurred over huge timescales, hundreds of thousands of millions of years. These timescales are difficult for humans to grasp, which is part of the reason humans struggle to comprehend the idea of evolution. Alrighty, so when we think of fossils and we need to put ages on them, we call it dating fossils. So we're not talking about two trilobites going out for dinner or an ammonite and a trilobite. We're actually talking about aging fossils. And aging fossils is what we call dating fossils. Okay, so techniques used to determine the age of fossil discoveries. There are two broad categories for dating fossils: relative dating and absolute dating. With relative dating, this is also known as comparative dating, and it's used to determine the age of a rock or fossil. Okay, and this technique depends on what we call stratification, and that is the layers of sediment around the fossil as such. This means that material found in the lower rocks are older, whereas those found in the higher rocks are younger. Now this works okay until you've got any tectonic action, any metamorphosis in your rock types. Okay, so if you've got sedimentary rocks that are nicely uniformly layered, you could have some tectonic action in there where you've got some changes in the rock type, but you can see definite layers that haven't been turned or manipulated. Relative dating works. Now we've got specific index fossils. Okay, so similar fossils from separate locations can be used as an index fossil to date the geographical event. So if you could have, for example, we've got Montana and Texas here, so two different locations in America, and they've got the same fossil in their rocks. Okay, you can actually date the level of the rocks. Now, as you can see, they're at different levels in terms of the strata, but our ammonites here and our ammonites here were around at the same time. Okay, so for whatever reason that they're different levels, we can date these ammonites for living 100 million years ago. So that's how we use relative dating. Index fossils can provide evidence of the relative age of fossils from different locations and give an indication of their likely appearance and extinction dates. They also can tell us the environment where those fossils are found. Now, absolute dating. Before we get started, a little bit of chemistry here. We talked about this in a couple of our other units. Now, isotopes. These are versions of atoms that are either heavier or lighter than other versions of the same atom. For example, carbon-14 has more mass than carbon-12. Right, we need to know about isotopes when we think about our absolute dating. Okay, so the age of a fossil can be determined by carefully examining the differences in the ratio of the isotopes in igneous rocks. So igneous rocks are those rocks that have undergone a complete change as such. Okay, so whereas with sedimentary rocks, that's the layers of sediment that have been compressed. Metamorphic has then either been heated or undergone extreme pressure. Our igneous rocks have been melted up and made into a new rock as such. Now, in that terms, our igneous rocks can undergo what we call absolute dating. There'll be no fossils in igneous rocks because the fossils have been melted. Okay, so we can't use relative dating with our igneous rocks at all. Now, this method of absolute dating is based upon natural radioactive decays of unstable atoms to more stable atoms. Remember, our atoms always want to be as stable as they can get. They want stability. Now, unstable atoms will radioactively decay to become more stable, specifically the nucleus of the atom. In a certain time period of time, called the half-life, you've probably heard of that, that's the time taken for half the amount of decay to occur. Half of the unstable atom will have decayed into more stable atom. Now, by measuring the ratio of unstable to stable decay products, the time that has elapsed since the decay began can be calculated. So this is equivalent to the age of the rock as such. So different radioactive isotopes are used to date different rocks, okay, or fossils. Radioactive decay, as I said, it can be used on some fossils, but generally it is used on igneous rocks, okay, and you will not get fossils in igneous rocks. So we've got carbon-14 dating. Now this is used in fossils. Carbon-14 is used on organic matter up to about 60,000 years old. Now, potassium argon dating, this is used on our igneous rocks, okay, a range of 50,000 years and older. Uranium is used on igneous rocks, range between 1,000 years to 1 million years old. Okay, so potassium argon and uranium dating, they are both on our igneous rocks, but carbon-14 dating used on organic matter, okay, so can be used on our fossils and other such matter. That's the end of video 1 for 5.1. Remember to subscribe to my YouTube channel, ABCs of STEM. See you in the next video.